It's a huge investment, isn't it, your wedding dress? But what do you do with it afterwards? Let's talk to my lunch break guest, Caroline Arthur from Whitley in Surrey. Now, Caroline is a bespoke bridal gown designer and has written a book called Relovable, inspiring ideas on what to do. 10 million of us have got an old wedding dress in the loft. Now, Caroline works closely with fashion colleges, speaks to students about how to run a sustainable creative business. She's featured on the BBC's Don't Tell the Bride, commented on Meghan's dress at the wedding to Prince Harry, and I'm delighted to say Caroline joins me in the studio. Lovely to see you.
Hi Sarah, thanks for having me on.
I have to say, I asked you while that song was playing what you did with your own wedding dress. A lovely story. Tell us more.
Well, I got my dress out of the loft after 25 years. I got it out and thought, show willing for the book, let's get the scissors out. And my 12-year-old walked in the bedroom and found me standing there, and she said, oh Mum, can I try it on once more before you cut it up? And she looked so sad, and I just couldn't do it. So I now actually have it on a mannequin in my sewing room, and it makes me so happy. I have brought it back into my life.
It's there, it's on display, it's not shoved away somewhere.
Yeah.
And your 12-year-old, I suppose, potentially could wear that dress, because that used to be a thing, didn't it? You would pass the dress down, you'd use a bit of the dress maybe potentially for a christening robe. We've stopped all that.
Well, do you know, I now, because I make bespoke dresses, I see a huge variety of different ideas, and a lot of people will come with their mum's dress or even their granny's dress, and they'll say, can you restyle it, can you remodel it, or can you just harvest the fabric from it and use it, because it has so much personal history intrinsically in the actual fabric itself. So yes, you're right, a lot of people who I interviewed for the book, they did say, I don't know what to do with it, it's been stuck in the loft, I haven't done anything. Some people did say, my aunt made it into a christening gown, which is lovely. There are some sort of traditional things you can do.
There are people like you getting in touch who can't bear to cut something so special. So Jan says, my wedding dress is folded nicely and kept in a suitcase in the loft. My mum was a seamstress and made mine and my sister's wedding and bridesmaids dresses. They're bespoke one-offs. The dress will stay whole and be passed down through the family as a keepsake. And I really think that's lovely. I love it when you go to a wedding and you see someone wearing something that has been, but I suppose some of the issue is a lot of us are very different shapes and sizes to those who have come before.
Yeah, very true. Body shapes have changed, and also tastes have changed. But in my experience, I suppose as a dressmaker, I see a blank canvas when I see a dress, and I can see any body shape, and I can visualise how that dress could be adapted to make it work for them. It might be that we don't use the complete dress, but it may well be that we can use an aspect of it. And again, it's just bringing in that personal history of the person that used to wear it.
I bet that's so special when you see somebody wearing a dress that was worn by their mother, grandmother, and then you see them looking stunning in it.
It's very moving, and I think it's very moving for the person that gave them the dress. They're not always there, but for the most cases you will have a mum on the sofa that sort of gives their dress to their daughter and say, you know, do what you like with it. And when we get to the end of the process and they've been through all the fittings and they're standing there feeling wonderful, you can see their mum almost reliving the moment when she wore it.
Where did this start for you then? When did you begin your business or decide that this was the line of work you wanted to go into?
Well, I've been a wedding dress designer for 20 years. I've just specialised in bespoke. So I see brides all day, every day. It sounds very glamorous, but most of the time I spend scrabbling around on the floor, pinning up people's hems. And this book started for two reasons. One was because almost all of my brides would say at some point in their fittings, what does everyone else do? They're sort of gazing at themselves in the mirror, entranced by this beautiful vision of them feeling their absolute best, feeling wonderful. And they just think it's such a waste to only wear it once. It's sometimes, I think, the environmental sustainability aspect of it, that they just feel, you know, it's much more on our minds, that we feel much more aware of only wearing something once, and about circularity and trying to keep things, you know, in circulation and wearing them and being able to reuse them. But also some people, they just feel very sad at the prospect of tucking it away in the loft. The other side of it was the bridal industry, which I know quite a lot about, having been in the industry for 20 years. And I'm conscious that a lot is spoken about the fashion industry. We have more and more in the news about what happens to fast fashion, where it ends up, how we overproduce, that sort of thing. But in the bridal industry, it's not really spoken about. And I wanted to try and have a little bit of influence if I could.
And what's lovely, I've mentioned that you were coming on, and we've had so much reaction from listeners, and a lot of people have mentioned the fact that you can donate your wedding gown. So we've got mention here, angel gowns. A lot of people wanted to know how you can do that. I would imagine if you put that in your favourite search engine, that will all come up. And this is where people donate their wedding dress, and then it's made into lovely gowns for babies who have sadly been born stillborn, which is very special.
It's one of the charities I recommend in the book. And actually, it was one of the first real stories I had from a bride who I contacted. I contacted about 200 people before I wrote the book to say, out of interest, what did you do with your dress? And somebody came back with a story almost straight away to say that she kept her dress for several years, wanting to get to have a child. She thought her daughter might wear it. And she said after countless rounds of IVF, she was never able to get pregnant. So she donated her dress to Angel Gowns so that it could be made into cut up and made into dresses for stillborn babies. So that is a lovely charity. There are many others that chime with the things in people's lives. So, for example, if you love the arts or you love theatre, you might donate it to somewhere like Glad Rags, which is in Brighton, which is a wonderful charity, and they hire out and give costumes for schools, communities that are doing theatre projects. There's a wonderful bridal boutique in London called Brides Do Good, and they campaign for the end of child marriage. So you're absolutely right. Your listener who called in about angel gowns, I think that is beautiful. But yes, you can always find a charity that chimes with what's relevant to you in your life.
And I gave mine to a charity shop after, because you think, well, somebody else, and it did sell, because I went back and it had gone. So and that's lovely, isn't it? Because you kind of feel, yes, it's got special memories, but actually you want to pass those special memories on.
Yes, and I think charity shops, we all shop in charity shops a lot more, I think, now for our general clothes, but also it is an untapped potential for fashion students. I work a lot with fashion colleges, and I'm trying to sort of channel people's dresses where they say they don't want them anymore and they don't know what to do with them. I sort of collect them and then pass them on to the fashion colleges I work with. And you should see the students' eyes light up when they have this beautiful fabric and they can see the potential of how they can refabricate it. I've brought some examples of how they can do that. They can knit it and crochet it. And
isn't it funny though, because when I grew up, my mum used to quite often go to jumble sales and she'd buy a lot of my clothes there, and there was a real stigma associated with that. You'd never admit that anything new that you had was actually second hand, whereas now my own daughter, she buys everything second hand, and a lot of her generation do. A lot of teenagers today, there is no longer a stigma associated with it.
Really true. I have a joint account with my daughter, who's now 13, on Vinted, and we regularly also shop at charity shops. We love it. It's almost it's a day out to go and scour the shops and just look at the fabrics, look at the labels, look for the beautiful quality that's there, rather than just heading straight into Primark.
And of course, you've quite often pick up something that no one else has got, because it's not being manufactured at the moment. We will talk more. You've brought some lovely items with you. I particularly like, is that a little mouse there that you have? I love that.
Yes, I pass it over.
That is beautiful, and that's made from a wedding dress.
It is. So I turned all of the wedding dresses that had been donated for the making of the book by bridal boutiques into various different garments, and I tested out dyeing and painting, and I can explain a bit more about how to do that if you want to dye a wedding dress. But at the end, I wanted this to be a zero waste project, and that means using up every little scrap of everything so you don't chuck anything away. So I ended up making quite a lot of smaller items, one of which being this little mouse. I got the pattern off Etsy and checked with the owner that she didn't mind me turning it into something and putting it in my book, and she was delighted. And it's just simply using the petticoat from the dress and just some of the lining fabric. Linings on wedding dresses very often aren't very nice, but turned into a little soft toy for a child. It's a beautiful...
You see, what I think about this is, I think, you quite often say, I'll pass the wedding dress on to the next generation. This would be lovely to have a few of these made and maybe give them to your future children, grandchildren,
yes,
as part of that, passing things on. And this very much reminds me of my lovely stepfather who died last year. My daughter found something online where they turned some of his clothes into this lovely bear, which my daughter ordered online and then presented to my mum.
Yes.
And it's just such a lovely thing, because sometimes clothes are the essence of someone, things people wore a lot, and they can be recycled and reused, and actually as a lasting memory.
Yes, they're very special. It's that memory that's held in the fabric. And I think, but you mentioned grandchildren. I think particularly when a grandparent has passed, it's a lovely thing for a grandchild to have. They might not really understand the significance of it at the time when they're really little, but this is the sort of thing that they will probably keep.
Your book is showing us things to do with our wedding dresses to create. You've got some lovely things that you've brought in, right? What's that you've got there?
Well, this looks rather strange, but this is actually a piece of knitting.
Right.
So I was looking for some unusual things to do, and one of the things that the fashion students I work with, to whom I donated some of these old wedding dresses, they look at refabrication, which I looked that up on Google to work out exactly what that was, and it turns out that you're taking one fabric and turning it into something else. I'm conscious that a lot of people don't sew, so whilst I would love for the whole world to go on a sewing course, that's not necessarily going to happen, but lots of people knit, and this is cut up from a wedding dress. I've literally turned it into tagliatelle, so these are about finger width. Cut up a wedding dress into strips, tied the strips together, passed it to my friend Lauren, who knitted it into a jumper.
You would never imagine that you could knit your wedding dress in such a fashion.
I think the two lovely things about it are, one, it's very accessible because so many people, there's a huge rise in people being able to knit. So this is something that actually you might not think of doing with your wedding dress, but you could. And the other thing is, I think knitting very often connects people, again, to their personal history. So most people's grannies will have sat there and knitted. If you're lucky enough, she may even have taught you to knit.
Isn't it funny, because there wasn't much knitting that went on when I grew up, actually, but my daughter, who's just started at university, she's joined the knitting club.
Actually,
there is a massive knitting. There's loads of them doing it.
Yes.
Absolutely loads of them, and there's something very therapeutic and good for your mental health about it as well.
And crochet. My said 12-year-old who I mentioned earlier, she crocheted this.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that.
I love a Christmas bauble. I think of all of the projects I tried for the book, it's probably my favourite, just because you can use it every year. It replaces that plastic tat that we stick on the Christmas tree. It's got memories in it. It's something you can pass on as an heirloom.
I think that's beautiful. And for me, a Christmas tree has to be filled with an eclectic mix of baubles with lots of memories, and because mine's filled with the stuff the kids made when they were little and all sorts, and that's another beautiful one as well.
Yes. And just while we're on refabrication, another thing I brought in here was actually a bomber jacket, which I made out of a fairly nasty, as I hate to say that, fairly nasty, very old wedding dress, which was not wearable again. It was made out of satin, and many people will probably notice when they get their wedding dress out of the loft, the fabric is very, very bridal.
Yeah.
And you think, how can I bring that into my life and restyle it? Because surely it will still look like wedding dress fabric. But if you use sandpaper on it, this then turns it into a suedette.
Oh my goodness! That really, you would never have thought about that.
Did you wonder where I was going
yes.
with that?
A suede, it does.
Yes.
You'd never imagine that had been a wedding dress.
Yeah. So I think it's a very exciting prospect to look at your wedding dress fabric and think, how could this change?
You've got underwear there as well.
I have. This was made by a friend of mine called Charlotte Havard, who runs Wishhanger Bespoke, which is a beautiful lingerie making business in Surrey. She makes a lot for people who have had surgery. She'll make very specific lingerie that works for people who are unusual body shapes or whose body shapes have changed for one reason or another. I gave her a tiny little lace bolero, which was literally just shreds of a few different pieces of lace. And I said, could you do anything with it?
Oh,
and she
stunning.
turned it. I mean, you could see that in Rigby and Pelham,
It's
couldn't you?
absolutely beautiful, and also something you can wear often, and it's so special.
So there are underwear making courses that you can go on, but if that sounds a bit much, you could think about something very simple, like, for example, taking a gown, getting a simple paper pattern and making a satin robe, and perhaps trimming it with a couple of pieces of lace to draw in your wedding dress.
It's just so special, though, isn't it, that you're keeping hold of something that has got such sentimental value. Get them out the bin bags, out the bin bags. Right, finally, let's have a final suggestion. You've got so many. That's beautiful as well.
This is a little clutch bag, and this was, again, a fairly dated-looking dress, but there are I think what's great to remember is it doesn't matter if you can't sew. People can be very put off thinking, what am I supposed to do? I can't, I don't have the skills. There are plenty of companies around who will make. So this was a company called Harlequin, who are in Essex. You can literally send them your fabric and they will make you a bag.
It doesn't just have to be wedding dresses, can it? It could be anything that is really special to you.
Yes.
Because there's lots of pieces of clothing that we get very sentimental about.
Yes, and it's bringing that into this whole thing about circular fashion. I think with the bridal industry and circularity, I think a lot of it is just getting back hold of those memories. With all of the stuff that's going on in the world, it can help to ground us in our own lives when we're able to reach back and think about a happy memory where we felt loved and confident.
I love your ideas, and so many people are getting in touch. So it's Angel Bridal in Chichester, West Sussex has been recommended. It says, "Hi Sarah, I donated my mum's vintage wedding dress to Bexhill Museum. My sister wore it at her first wedding. My wedding dress came from Freeman's catalogue. My sister-in-law wore it as well. Still have it." This is it. Some lovely wedding dress stories. Thank you so much for being our lunch break guest. Tell us about the book and where we can get it.
Thank you. That's very kind. Well, I'm the worst bookseller ever because actually I don't want to sell too many. I'm restricting the amount of copies that are distributed, simply because it's not lost on me the irony that I'm saying reuse, recycle, and here's a new book that you can buy. But I think if you can share it and use it and it's really useful to you, I would love you to come and find it. You can buy it on my website, carolinearthur.com.
And then you get all the ideas and you pass it on to the next one to deal with their dress.
Or take it into the library when you've finished with it and donate it.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much, Caroline.